Hey there everybody, how's it going? My name is Thamria. Welcome everybody to Final Fantasy XIV. In today's video, I want to talk about the AoE Telegraphs in Final Fantasy XIV, some of the differences of Final Fantasy XIV's Telegraphs compared to other MMOs, and to discuss whether or not Final Fantasy XIV Telegraphs are by design good or bad. So let's go ahead and begin with talking about the Telegraphs. What are these particular Telegraphs? Whenever an enemy is using an AoE attack, either be a column attack, a cone, or a large circle AoE, you will get a damage if you are hit by the AoE by the time it disappears. The animation of the attack itself doesn't matter. So when you see large circles or cones or line attacks like column attacks coming out from Final Fantasy XIV, the damage will only be applied if you're still standing within that AoE marker by the time it disappears. The actual animation doesn't really matter, it's simply there to be an animation for you to admire afterwards when you dodge it. You can run within the animation all you like, you just gotta make sure that you're not affected by the actual AoE marker. I've been talking a little bit every now and then with people that just got to Final Fantasy XIV, and some particular newcomers found it kind of a struggle and kind of a new thing to get used to regarding Final Fantasy XIV. Compared to games like Elder Scrolls Online or Guild Wars 2, the AoE markers coincide with the animation and they're almost pitch perfect with each other, as in whenever the animation of the fire appears on the ground happens, your character will get set on fire, or whenever you see a large puddle of poison appear and drop down on the ground into an AoE marker and you're standing in it, then you will get affected by the marker. The marker and animation coincide together rather simultaneously, meaning as soon as you see the animation with the marker, that means you're getting affected by it, compared to Final Fantasy XIV, where animation happens after the marker disappears. Even in games like Elder Scrolls Online, sometimes the animation doesn't even have to be present before it appears. It will start off as a large growing AoE circle that grows eventually into a certain size, whether it be small, medium, or big, and then the animation can go off of, whether it be a ground pound animation or a lightning animation or whatever other animation that follows suit. Not all AoE markers coincide with a follow-up animation to show you that something is happening, get out of the way. Sometimes they just appear and your quick instinct is to get away from it as soon as humanly possible. This type of approach a lot of MMOs started to use as of recent because it adds more flavor and adds more interactivity for the player playing the game. It makes sure the player constantly stays on a move and is not just tanking and spanking everything on the way to max level. Either way, it's become a staple of the MMO culture right now to include these AoE markers and to follow along suit with them, and in a way it kind of makes it feel a little bit more interactive whenever you see these markers appear. Players feel like they're more involved within a battle or within the world that they're in, and they actually have to move around a little bit out of the way of harm in order to continue the battle and in order to come out victorious. This particular approach to AoE mechanics and AoE casts from opponents and enemies in MMOs is becoming more and more of a staple feature that every single MMO is trying to adopt now. Regarding Final Fantasy XIV markers, I'd like to compare it to two particular games that I've been playing as of recent, Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online. Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online have particular approaches to how to mitigate the mechanics of AoE markers and how the players can directly interact with these such markers. In Final Fantasy XIV, like I explained before, if you're standing within an AoE marker before it disappears, then you get hit by the AoE. You can run into the animation if you want to, and there are some explanations regarding why it is so. There was a post made on the Final Fantasy XIV forum that I will leave in the link below, made all the way back in 2013, that talked about the netcode issue and why it exists and why everything in such a manner being designed in Final Fantasy XIV. Clearly this post is extremely outdated, but I do believe that this has been resolved through fine-tuning of the netcode slightly, to the point where players don't have to move really far away in order to avoid an AoE marker. To explain it a little bit easier, some MMOs have a client live state, which means anything that's happening in a client on your PC is uploaded directly to the server and the other players get to see the interaction. If you have a server live state, that means the server is running and your inputs from the client get responded back from the server onto you, and you get to see these actions happen in real time. It depends on which type of MMO, which type of infrastructure the MMO has or can afford. I guess depends more on the budget and more on the design choice. In this particular post, Square Enix apparently chose to use server dictated live states. There are particular reasons for them outlined in a couple of bullet points. It prevents desync bug on its server, prevents countless potential duping bugs, prevents in theory teleportation and other unauthorized client commands from being accepted, once again by theory, and if the player has good connection to the server, little to no delay is observed by the player. The detractors of the server live state, however, are also poor connection results in nearly unplayable conditions, specifically conditions which require fast reaction time, and server infrastructure is more costly. Servers must do much more data processing. In the past, server live state was extremely rare because internet connection was still poor or narrowband according to Sinth. By the way, thank you so much Sinth for this particular post and helping outline this issue in very nice detail. I'm under the impression that the server live state came around to be with patch 1.0 of Final Fantasy XIV when the first iteration of the game came out, and it was probably kept because it was just a lot cheaper to keep it instead of redesigning onto a client live state. I am not 100% sure if Final Fantasy XIV still uses server live state or client live state, but I'm inclined to say that it still uses server live state, which is why latency can still affect your playing conditions. According to Sinth, this particular infrastructure can be changed technically, but it'd be extremely costly and time consuming. Since this post was made in 2013 and I haven't heard anything from Square Enix announcing about changes to the server or how the infrastructure works in Final Fantasy XIV, aside from moving the North American data centers from Canada to California, I do not believe they made significant changes to the infrastructure of the network for Final Fantasy XIV. Understanding how netcode affects the AoE markers in Final Fantasy XIV is going to be pretty important because everybody is going to have to try to find a sweet spot when latency meets the conditions for them to move out of the way and when they can move back into the animation. Things like fighting a regular mob is not really that big of a deal, and I've been able to play this game even on the worst connection that I had in the past. I've since upgraded my internet service by not a lot because I live in North Carolina and we have Spectrum, and Spectrum, if you ever have Spectrum, is not the very best. In fact, they're actually one of the most annoying internet service providers I've ever had to deal with in my entire life. And now that Spectrum is watching this video, they're going to be charging me extra fees for talking bad about them on my own video. The only time I was able to experience huge differences is during a DDoS attack on Final Fantasy XIV servers in the past, or whenever there's a huge internet buffering happening over at my own house. I do live with a twin that also uploads videos and streams, so every now and then, whenever he uploads the videos, I will experience a slight lag spike before everything becomes normal. When it comes to being practical in dungeons, open world, or even raids, latency is not even an issue. However, if you go to Rival Wings, yeah, Rival Wings is a whole other beast to talk about. While in Final Fantasy XIV PvP, latency and AoE Telegraphs, especially in Rival Wings, are really bad and can get you killed either way, whether you've been standing in the AoE marker for even a nanosecond. A lot of the times it can be forgiven because you do need to die in Rival Wings every now and then to go back to the base and regroup and reorganize your strategy. Let's say, for example, you go into a top lane and you see a Brute Justice. The Brute Justice uses its column attack and kills you after you've been bombarded by a couple of bards and a machinist. When you get killed and respawn back at your base, you know you're gonna have to grab another Brute Justice or a Cruise Chaser to deal with the opposing faction. You could say it's just an excuse, but at the same time, you're gonna have to die sooner or later eventually in Final Fantasy XIV PvP. Might as well be sooner when you're facing against something big so that you can respawn and regroup. This is not me disagreeing that netcode in Final Fantasy XIV PvP isn't good. It's not perfect. In fact, it's a little bit sloppy. I wish it was a little bit tighter on the roll, because otherwise it's really hard to dodge a Mage Limber Break or a Cruise Chaser AoE or a Cleave attack. Everything goes off really fast and feels a little bit unsteady, but at the same time I'm able to ignore it because I'm having fun in Rival Wings. Even if I die in Rival Wings, it just gives me an ability to reset my strategy and maybe grab a Cruise Chaser or Brute Justice or an Oppressor back at the base and try to help with the push whether we go north or south. I'm not ignoring the issue here. I know it's broken, but I still find it really fun regardless of whether it's broken or not. Now, if we compare Final Fantasy XIV AoE markers to Guild Wars 2 markers, another game that I've been enjoying myself thoroughly in the new expansion, the AoE Telegraphs in Guild Wars 2 function together typically with an animation or a leading animation that leads into an AoE marker eventually, like a fireball flying through the sky, and as it hits the ground, an AoE marker with fire appears. In Guild Wars 2 you have something called Evade, which gives you almost invincibility frames, allowing you to evade out of combat. Even if you have bad latency, if you can time the evade just right, it lets you become invincible and be able to get away from AoE markers. So even if you have really bad latency, learning how to time evade at just the right time before animation goes out is going to be your key to survival. In fact, evade helps me get out of combat a lot really fast, and being able to dodge out of AoE markers or out of AoE cleaves or any kind of AoEs issues in Guild Wars 2 is a godsend for me. I don't know why, but I've been having a lot of issues with latency in Guild Wars 2. Either items don't load, or NPCs don't load, or objects don't load, and sometimes latency just catches up with me and everything freezes for a second before I get hit with a large AoE and die. Ever since the expansion release, I've been having a lot of loading issues in Guild Wars 2. I'm pretty sure it's an isolated problem, but regardless, I'm still able to dodge out of AoE mechanics because of the evade. If I didn't have the evade, that gives me invincibility during the evade animation, then I wouldn't be able to functionally play the game, unfortunately. Now compare that to Elder Scrolls Online AoE Telegraphs. In Elder Scrolls Online, when you're within a telegraph, you take damage. When you're not in a telegraph, you do not take damage. There's some telegraphs that are considered large AoE telegraphs. If you're standing in those when it reaches its peak, then you get hit really hard. There are some moments I find myself able to stand in AoE markers simply because I'm playing a tank and I'm able to pop a cooldown to withstand the damage. And the healer healing me through the AoE mechanic if I'm tanking a boss in an AoE puddle usually is a lifesaver. I try to stay away from AoE mechanics on purpose because I don't want to put a lot of pressure on the healer. Elder Scrolls Online has a dodge ability as well, but it doesn't function the same way as Guild Wars 2. If you dodge into an AoE, you still get hit. It's still gonna hurt. So don't be standing in an AoE and don't be dodging into an AoE. Rolling out of the way is just a really quick way to get you out of combat with really fast speed. Dodging or rolling in ESO simply propels you in a certain direction that you double tap into. Aside from moving in a clutch moment from an AoE, it doesn't really have any particular significance within the game. In fact, as a tank I'm able to simply run out of AoE markers and then run back into the battle if necessary. Unlike Guild Wars 2, you don't have invincibility frames. It's very action oriented, and you better not be standing in AoE markers before they start doing the cast or before they start doing the damage. It's definitely a lot more punishing, but at the same time the game counters that with letting you use a soul stone in order to resurrect a party member. So if you lost a healer or you lost a tank, you can easily resurrect them if you have a soul stone through sacrifice. In my opinion, it makes the fights a lot more intense because you gotta constantly look out for AoE markers. Always make sure you're staying on the move and not committing to a particular spot unless the mechanics dictate otherwise. Guild Wars 2 and Elder Scrolls Online play significantly different to Final Fantasy XIV. Like I mentioned earlier, in Final Fantasy XIV, you usually see the animation after the AoE marker hits. There are, however, fights like XIV and EX that do not telegraph a particular marker. You have to kind of give it by tell and almost imagine in your head and draw in your head a marker appearing in front of you. Those particular fights are really disorienting to players that are used to seeing the telegraphs and used to knowing what to move out of them. And while I do recognize that the netcode is not exactly the most perfect spot-on thing in Final Fantasy XIV, to me personally, it's not a deal breaker. To some players it may be so, especially if they're used to how other games do AoE Telegraphs. The only tip I can really have for you is you gotta make sure you practice the latency and try to get a good gauge on it on your own. That's what I had to do back in World of Warcraft, that's still what I do in Final Fantasy XIV. Latency is expected. I'm playing an online MMO, I'm playing an online product. I'm gonna have to deal with other players and my actions will be determined by my connection or how good my connection is at that very moment. And even with the current issues of the netcode and being kind of finicky and after getting used to it for a little bit, I'm able to play the game just fine. It takes adjustment compared to like World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2 or ESO, but I adjusted and I'm able to play perfectly fine. And I'm having a blast and having fun. I don't know, I guess it just takes time to get used to this kind of latency change. Nevertheless, what are your thoughts on AoE Telegraphs and how the netcode in Final Fantasy XIV is working right now? I know it's kind of a dry topic, but I've seen kind of a debate happening in my Discord about it a couple of days ago, and I wanted to make a video about it. I wasn't able to make a video as of recent because, well, mostly because of a lot of family business and because of Christmas shopping. But now that I'm fully done and ready and able to make a bunch of videos, I'm able to come back to Final Fantasy XIV and just in general make commentaries on gaming videos. Nevertheless, leave me your thoughts and comments below. Let me know what you think about the new microphone audio setup that I got going on right now, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do like the video, make sure to hit the like button. If you want to see more, make sure to hit subscribe. And unfortunately, I'm gonna have to ask you to start pressing the bell button if you want to get updated on my newest videos because of YouTube's fiasco with Elsa and Spider-Man and all that stuff, and YouTube becoming a dumpster fire on the website sometimes. Videos don't get usually fed into the feed, so if you want to see videos and you want to get notified when they're up, make sure to hit the bell button. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed the video. My name is Samuel. Like, subscribe, and as always, have a good day, and I'll see you all next video or whatever I make. See ya!